I've heard of the Penlee Lifeboat disaster. Okay, good, right, good number. Happened 40 years ago. This is a ballad written about that disaster. I'm particularly interested in it because my son was a volunteer lifeboatman in Brighton, and then he moved down to Newlyn, just beyond Penzance, and he was then a member of the volunteer crew of the new Penlee Lifeboat. In fact, when he was married, we went out on the Penlee Lifeboat along the cliffs to the point where the key moment of this ballad occurs. And it just struck me, and I also actually have a connection with the pilot of the helicopter who was involved in the attempted rescue, because he was at Caldrose, the naval station, the rescue station, and my cousin was working there and knew him very well. He was an American pilot, and he became scarred as a result of this terrible time for the rest of his life. He has never been able to get over it. And it just struck me that it was such an amazing and heroic act that it needed a ballad. It called out for a ballad. And as far as I could ascertain, there were a lot of songs, folk songs, that had been written that were sung around the pubs in Cornwall, but no one had actually written a ballad about it. So I attempted to write a ballad about it. Does anyone know where the village, the village where all the crew came from, which it was? Anyone remember? It's a tiny little fishing village you've probably heard of or seen pictures of, very, very cute, called Mousehole. The whole crew came from this tiny village, about 500 people living there at the time, and they all, most of them had families, and it had a devastating effect on Mousehole. The Song of the Solomon Browne, The Loss of the Penlee Lifeboat, 19th December 1981. Young Morton was a rising man, esteemed by all his crew, skipper of his line's flagship at the age of 32. But Morton of the Union Star, on which his die was cast, could little dream her maiden voyage would also be her last. A launch put out from Brightlingsea. The office must not know, for his wife and her 2 daughters were seated in the bow. From Brightlingsea a launch put out with spirits light and gay, the ladies decked with scarves and hats, which dressed the sea next day. The small waves clapped their passing. A fair wind seemed to bless. The plaining gulls mewed farewell as they passed Dungeness. Light glittered from the channel, the water soft and blue. The Union Star churned westward with her young, lively crew. A playful breeze combed curls of hair. The sun shone in Rye Bay. The mother smiled. The girls were young, and youth will have its days. The sturdy engine's drumming saluted Beachy Head, erect as a bold guardsman, its tower white and red. The waves broke in Lamorna Cove, 300 miles away. The sea seethed secrets to the sand of what was soon to be in that ribbon of white water which parcels up the sea. There was an assignation when darkness strangled day, where grey waves sucked and licked the cliffs 300 miles away. Through the night throbbed the brass screw, freshing the sea to white. Like ghosts the needles glimmered, dim shone the Portland light. The engines sweetly thrumming, the ship's lights far from shore, as they plugged down to start point, they woke and slept no more. The dawn that broke was drear and dull. The wind rose with the day. The bowhead plunged her head through waves which bucked the sea in play. The sea was dark and broken as Eddystone boiled past. The glass was falling steadily, a force 10 storm forecast. Rounding the Lizard, The ship beat Mounts Bay in heavy seas. The white-whipped waves crashed on her hatch as she rolls savagely. The waves about Boscawen Point were growling, granite grey. The cold boulders were keening for what they'd claimed that day. The engine coughed, sputtered, and died. The ship in silent shock. But for the roar of wind and wave, the sea had breached the fuel tank 8 miles off Wolf Rock. The radar, lights, the heater died. Broadside and north her drift toward the nightmare thunder on the cliffs of West Penwith. The Coast Guard, finally informed, summoned a sturdy 3, a salvage tug, a Sea King, and the lifeboat at Penlee. The Sea King, soonest ready, no sun that dead day rose. Her rotor blades ticked over by her hangar at Culdrose. 600 souls in Mosul, each heard the tempest brawl. Clamped to the hill like limpets, the houses stir and groan. Waves detonate against the harbour wall. The shout for Penlee sounded. Immediate launch, the call. Trevelyan Richards, coxswain, battled the tearing squall. Just home for Christmas, Kevin Smith set his face to the storm. Stephen Madron, boat's mechanic, left wife, daughter and son. Gary Wallace, 22, the baby of the crew, was watching darts with Joker, Nigel Brockman. Both hastened to the boathouse too. Quiet John Blewett slipped from his daughter's birthday, waved quick goodbye to wife and son. Harry Torrey, fisherman, hugged his wife and 2 boys. See you later. He was gone. Charlie Greenhall, publican, larger than life, the genial landlord of the ship, shouldered the hurricane. 2 mortal hours were wasted in that racked universe, for the captain would not mayday, and the Casnal Sea grew worse. For Morton was a proud man and master of his fate. He did not accept he needed help, until help came too late. The drift speed, Morton reckoned, was half the speed they sped. As giant breakers beckoned, before the waves they fled. The waves were now past 40 feet. Fast, fast to land she flew, through a wilderness of water to her rest at Tatadoo. In a blur of blades and yammer, the Sea King left her pad, slammed by the rain's wild hammer. The winds screamed as if mad. Maroons for Penlee thundered, waves leapt, and at their height the coxswain shouted, "Now, lads!" and the holding pin flew out. Down, down, plunged down the Solomon Browne. There was no time to pray, to a mad vortex of water, to a world of blinding spray. The Sea King, summoned too late, its crew were filled with dread. Below them in the wheelhouse saw faces grey as lead. Their searchlights lit the scene below as though it were a stage, lit children in the wheelhouse like creatures in a cage. Marlowe, the winchman, swung out above those living dead through huge arcs as on a trapeze. His life hung by a thread. The mast upon the Union Star, full 50 feet in height, sliced through the air, each sickening fall, quick as a guillotine. The slightest touch on rotors was certain death for all. Heroically, Smith circled. The Sea King reared and shied, but they could not make the rescue, though God knows how they tried. There was nothing that they could do, but only watch and pray. They had to hover, helpless, just 30 yards away. The Solomon Browne flung through the storm, scaled sheer walls of fury, then dived bow first into the void, lost in a fearful gloom. The Noord-Holland loomed from the night, and hope soared at the sight. But Skipper Browne saw at once no sea room for a tow. His sturdy tug was helpless, for their drift was under shoals. 2 hours before, he could have towed to safety those 8 souls. The Solomon Browne, in a whirl of spray, burst on the livid scene. Might yet those in the wheelhouse be granted what they pray? Unearthly sheets of flying spume, while wind at face and wheelhouse flung, while wind and sea one hammer beat, the hulls like anvils rung. From the deep reared titanic stacks, which floods roared off and spate down chasms to the brown sea rack. But the lifeboat would not wait. The coxswain turned the wheel at once to wrench her alongside. Barely 100 yards away, Death, watchful, sat, attentively, half hidden by the spray. Nearer and nearer the black cliffs loomed, for Death will have his day. Caught between heights of ocean, caught below granite graves, is that highway of white water which shrinks with every wave. Such mastery of boat and sea, such courage and such skill, 4 from the stricken ship they snatch, each one a miracle. Tenacious as a terrier, they turn and come again in a tumult of white water. The sea hurled 2 men overboard. On deck, just 2 remain. Battered by wind-whipped hurricane exploding on her deck, slowly she turned her head again, a wounded dog in pain, defying storm and wreck. Hefted by freakish waters 50 feet into the air, the 14-meter lifeboat, a child's toy suspended, paused a moment in the sky. Then down was smashed the Solomon Browne on the Union Star, upended. What black terror of water, convulsed in mouth and lung, what wave, what maelstrom, what horror in that moment, sucked far out by the undertow onto the keen rocks flung. And now let every mother's son, husband, father who died, be told with aching gratitude, with honor and with pride. Name them again with grief like granite. Name them with stricken awe, who gave the dearest thing they owned, unflinching off that shore. Charlie Greenhow, Nigel Brockman, John Blewett and Stephen Madron, Barry Torrey, Gary Lewis, Kevin Smith, Trevelyan Richards.